In this part, welcome to the Good Medicine Podcast, and this is part 4 of Yahweh, the Two-Faced God. In this part, I'm going to discuss Joseph Farrell's book titled Apocalypse Theater, Yahweh, the Two-Faced God. Before I do, I will recap the last 3 episodes. I gave the viewer some background on myself and said that this is a hard topic for me to discuss, and actually, I have been hesitant about doing it because I come from a background where I believe in God and have been deeply involved with Christian faith. And what I'm saying is certainly not discussed in Christian circles. And if it is, it would be under rare occasions, and it is to refute things like I have said here. On a few occasions, I have alluded to some of these things to some good Christians' friends, and I could tell alarm bells were going off, as I got comments like, "I will be praying for you," or comments like, "Don't turn away from Yahweh," or that the devil is leading me astray, or I am blaspheming God. I'm not claiming to be an expert in religion, nor a scholar, but I do have a good handle on many aspects of it, and I would say safely above average. So I want to assure the listener that I am not just coming at this from a position of total ignorance. I have an extensive background with it. This is why I started with some of my personal background. And I want to re-emphasize that I am in no way looking to disparage, attack, or belittle fellow Christians or Jews or Muslims. I am just trying to explain where I am coming from and the evolution of thought as I encountered what I found to be a glaring contradiction, and a huge one at that, namely that the God for the Bible was two-faced, one face being good, the other evil. And I want to recap and say, I firmly believe this two-faced God is a certainty based upon numerous texts from the Bible, and that there has been no satisfactory resolution over centuries to this contradiction, although many have struggled to do so, namely by ignoring the evil side and claiming God is all good and has no evil. But it is what it is, and we can't change that. Therefore, there is no need for a resolution, as there is no resolution, and that I believe there's some kind of divinity, which I call the source. And this source is unfathomable and is not the same thing as the God of the Bible or any man-made God or God of any religion. And those gods, or God, are actually a reflection of mankind and all of his personality flaws, good and bad, as well as a reflection of mankind's dual nature to be both good and evil. And I think we can't be psychologically healthy with the moral schizophrenia found in the Bible, and we have to cherry pick and reject what we deem evil and bad and keep what we feel is good, and draw from other religious and philosophical traditions. One quick digression here. Joseph Farrell has many good books that are very interesting and thought-provoking. I highly recommend him and taking a good look at some of his other works. Joseph Farrell and Dr. DeHart also found out the hard way that broaching this topic brought a lot of hardship and friction into their lives, because it is going against core foundational doctrines, which goes back to something I said in episode 1, that most people are dogmatic, even though they say they are not. And what I have said and the material I will present with Dr. DeHart and Mr. Farrell goes against core doctrines. What is Mr. Farrell and Dr. DeHart saying? Let us start with a term they use throughout the book, Yahwism, which according to Dr. DeHart is, quote, Yahwism means simply to connote those monotheism that have as their basis some version, be it Jewish, Christian, or Islamic, of the Old Testament character of Yahweh, end quote. And that this character is crucial to formation in Western and Middle Eastern culture and is central to their religions. I will just briefly mention that Mr. Farrell and Dr. DeHart echo the idea that this character, Yahweh, is morally schizophrenic and has the dual nature of being both good and bad, and all the problems I addressed earlier, which are problematic for these religions. What I really want to touch upon are some unique concepts featured in the book. I have read it, and it's a hard read because they present some concepts that are not commonplace, and I would like to try my best to skim over them, and I highly suggest you read the book for yourself, as you may get something out of it. I am unable to communicate. They start the book with this ancient concept of the ancient metaphor, which is basically the concept of a trinity found throughout all ancient religions. And this trinity, being what makes up all of nature and although separate, is actually a part of a greater whole. The metaphor is a kind of larger cosmological view, or natural religion, or said another way, a nature religion. Instead of God being separate from nature, God is a part of nature. For example, in the Hindu view of things, there is number 1, Vishnu the creator, number 2, Brahma the preserver, number 3, Shiva the destroyer. In the ancient Greek, there is number 1, the cosmos, number 2, God, number 3, the space between them. They all are separate but originally come from one source. Now comes the revolutionary aspects of Yahwism, that there is a divine being that claims to be God, in this case Yahweh, and communicates a private message to a messenger like Moses, who then communicates it to the people. This message is dogmatic and authoritative. It opposes the nature religions or ancient metaphor, and therefore, being a message from God, the people must accept it, and those who do not, like the ancient Egyptians, are therefore a symbol of the ancient metaphor, and are not within the light, but in darkness and wickedness, and are destroyed or overthrown via violent revolution. Those outside of the divine revelation, and I quote, are viewed as potential converts or enemies. In effect, the rise and foundation of Yahwism are violent revolutionary acts, as the death of the firstborn of Egypt lead to its establishment. DeHart and Mr. Farrell go on to explain how all three monotheism have been founded historically upon acts of violent revolution. I think a case can be made that both Christianity and Islam were both spread via the sword, and both have very long and violent histories. They go on to draw parallels between non-religious political movements of Nazism and communism that were also based upon similar violent revolutions. That is another topic, and you can read the book to find out more about their views on that. The moral schizophrenia does play a crucial role in all of this. In order to carry out genocide, as ordered by Yahweh in the Bible, you need a divine authority that can override standard morality to carry out the task of killing men, women, children, and infants. If I said God says you must murder your neighbor, you would think I am crazy. But in the right context, as we see with Islamic terrorists today, many do go through a brainwashing process and then commit atrocities. October 7th in Israel is a good example. There are countless more throughout history. The present war between Israel and Hamas has many moving parts and is very complex, and I do not think it can be simply boiled down to a few religious concepts. But I do think such concepts, as Farrell and DeHart describe, do play a part in the background, which DeHart and Farrell argue is a byproduct of the three Yahwisms. Norse. Another interesting aspect DeHart and Farrell point out is this concept of a text having a divine authority. You do not see this concept in play with something like Buddhism, but is front and center in Yahwism. The Bible, the Torah, the Quran, are the Word of God, and there is no argument with the Word of God. But to understand the Word of God correctly, you need a priestly class to interpret it for you, and they tell you what it means. And if you go outside of it, well, then excommunication, and throughout most of history, excommunication meant the inability to survive, similar to one not being allowed to be employed today, and in some cases burned at the stake, tortured, and so forth. DeHart and Farrell make an argument that Yahweh was really a creation of an elite in the ancient days, and this elite was the go-between the people and God. It was the elite that told the people what Yahweh said and wrote and interpreted his text for the people, giving this elite an absolute authority over the people. And if acts like genocide were needed to advance the elite's agenda, then they could get moral license from God to order the people to do so. The appeal to a higher authority can be used to justify any kind of immoral behavior. When the Nazis were tried at Nuremberg, they appealed to the fact they were just obeying orders. On a smaller scale, today's Christian ministers tell their members, God has told them to give him their money. And we know many such ministers live the lifestyles of the rich and famous. Or just use the word Allah, and you can now kill Israelis. The final triumph of Yahwism is when all opposing systems are overthrown in the great final battle or the apocalypse. For the Jews, it will be the return of the Messiah. For the Muslims, the final days are to be preceded by tribulations and wars, and finally the destruction of the universe, and then Judgment Day for everyone. And something similar for the Christians. There is a long list of apocalyptic scenarios, and I can't keep track of them all. What is disturbing is that many radical sects in all three Yahwisms want to expedite the apocalypse. With this being the nuclear age, the thought of some of them getting such weapons is truly terrifying and alarming. There is certainly more to this whole topic, and I hope you, the listener, look deeper into, and I truly hope it has been an aid in helping you have a greater understanding. I encourage everyone to think for themselves, and I hope this has also been thought-provoking. I will close by asking you to consider my charity, Sakura Home, which is a home I am trying to start for mentally disabled adults. One way to help is by spreading the word for me, visiting the website, and making donations. I want to thank you for listening, and I truly wish you all the best. Sincerely, and Godspeed Good Medicine.